Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from the Awesome Health Podcast, and I'm here with Dr. Stefan. And we'll get into his variety of names, his variety of lifetimes, his variety of interests. Dr. Stefan is an incredible guy. Sometimes some people call him Dr. Amazon. He's a naturopathic doctor. He also studied medicine at Duke. He's going to talk about that. He's also an extremely spiritual guy. He's into a lot of psychological stuff, and he's one of the most remarkable individuals I know. In fact, I've been friends with Stefan for, well, geez, must be getting close to 13, 14 years. It's a long time. It's a long time. We met in Sedona, Arizona, as both of us were kind of engaged in a spiritual sadhana. That is our journey for self-realization through ourselves. And we have found out we had a lot of common interest. But let's get into a little bit about your background, because, you know, it's hard to peg you down, Doc. I mean, geez, you've done so many things and you have such a broad brushstroke. Can you give for people, before we get into today's talk, which I think is going to mind blow, about what you're doing with Indigenous people, what you're doing with some of these medicines that are found in the Amazon, of course, your medical background, your naturopathic background, your psychological background. I mean, it's just, you're just a jack of all trades and you're really good at all these things. How did you get here? How did you get on this journey, and where is it going?
Well, my friend, I want to thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you and do this lovely chat. It reminds me a little bit of the kind of talks we had in the Amazon with the indigenous tribes, where, you know, instead of watching television, we spend our time tell a vision. So here we are sharing stories with each other, and life is about stories and the epic journey where we embark on. We all have these stories in us, and I feel privileged that I've had a chance to live out some amazing ones. I really have. So yeah, there's so many things to cover, but I definitely wanted to share some salient bits of my story, and you know, invite your listeners to go on that journey with me if they feel the resonance. So, yeah, I mean, I just know when I was a kid, I was born in a traditional Ukrainian household, if you will. Even though I grew up outside New York City, I was raised with very sense of traditional values. All my family was born and raised in Ukraine, my roots, and they were farmers and landowners, wealthy farmers and landowners, and they were really connected with nature. So here I grew up in a traditional household with those kind of values, and yet when I went outside and I would play, you know, as a kid, climb the apple tree and grow the flowers and tend the garden, I almost feel like I could talk to the plants. I almost felt like I could hear their music and hear their resonance. So I didn't know quite what to do with it, because as kids, we see things that adults don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's so true.
Kids, we have these boundaries that no one told us we couldn't see this. No one could told us we couldn't experience this. And then fast forward a few decades later, here I go, I'm in the jungle with a curandero shaman, and they're like, the plants, of course you can talk to the plants. They can sing. Why, can't you hear their music? So, you know, life is about going that full circle and finding and reconnecting with who we really are, and not just simply you know, getting lost in the world or just getting lost in the book knowledge as well. You know, really it was about getting the book knowledge into the heart, and discovering who we are as souls, as spirits, as essences, beyond simply our personality and who we were programmed and raised to believe.
You know, I think what's really fascinating, because we're going to dive deep into kind of some of the lessons and possibilities that the indigenous people of South America and other indigenous tribes and your work with them in a minute. But I also want to, before we get into that, is talk about your past. You had an interesting past where you were kind of going down one route with Duke University. You had a major life-changing experience. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, that pathway coming out of, say, childhood and young adolescence, and then moving on to what was a plan to be a career in one thing, and then life changes and you ended up in a career in the other thing, but they actually kind of co-contribute.
And that's what's so wild, Wade. Is that somehow, you know, there is a higher self in us that I feel guides our decisions, in addition to needing to take care of our responsibilities in the world, following that voice inside and doing the hard work necessary for that. So I remember even interviewing during colleges, you know, I looked at Harvard, I looked at Princeton, Yale, And yet I was still somehow drawn to Duke for reasons I could not understand. And later I found out when I got accepted to Duke, Duke had a parapsychology department. And the cool thing about parapsychology, which is why I think for your listeners is such a great topic, is there's normal psychology. Psychology is how do you study behavior, and you know, in a very conventional way, A equals B leads to C. You know, just a very logical, systematic approach to how people behave and think. But parapsychology is next to that, and that's studying behaviors beyond things you can explain with the normal senses. And here we go. I mean, I attended Duke and I discovered this parapsychology department that got kicked out of Duke and is off campus, known as Rhine Research Center. So I'm studying pre-med and psychology and computer science responsibly, if you will. And here I go, a bit of a rebel. I'm, you know, during lunch, I sneak off on campus and go study with these renegade psychologists, these PhD physicists, doing these amazing tests. And I'll mention some of these tests because I think it's just important for us to realize, you know, these realms we're talking about that we're into go way beyond the mind, but there's ways to grapple with them. So for example, one test was called the Zener Deck, and it was a deck of symbols. So there's 5 different symbols, you know, you see them in front of you, and cards that are flipped upside down. And your job is to try to guess what the card says by matching it with these random cards. Okay. And that's one test. And that's to see if you have this so-called ESP. Can you guess beyond the senses? Can you guess beyond the senses? So, you know, there's those kind of tests. There were other tests where they call it remote viewing, where you'd sit in one room with your eyes closed with blindfolds, and someone would literally try to send a message to you, some symbols, and you describe what comes to your mind. And I know these experiments sound kind of crude, but over the decades they were done, there have been meta-analyses done that, you know, the way these results were was way above chance, way beyond chance.
The U.S. military is heavily involved in remote viewing for a variety of its things since the late 60s and 70s. There's some great books out there. So this is not, it's interesting. A lot of this stuff is on the surface is debunked by what I'd say the quote unquote naysayers out there, yet the very institutions that are debunking them, there are these pockets of deep research where the highest levels of government and science are actually experimenting kind of on their own while they're telling everybody else, no, this doesn't really exist.
Well, that's exactly it. And that's why I developed a bit of a rebel streak here in studying these things, and you know, a bit of a rebel curiosity, explorer, pioneer streak that I had such a fascination doing this work. And you know, I got to work on Wall Street for a little bit in connection with my work at Duke. And even when I find out the executives in Wall Street are interested in intuition and they're willing to even entertain these conversations. So, you know, there was the opportunity to kind of cross and blend bridges, find what I'm passionate, interested in about, and see a way for that to fit in the world. And the world actually got interested because, you know, if people could make better decisions in Wall Street, that may actually improve the bottom line and improve their quality of life.
There was a research study actually with CEOs, and they found that the best CEOs actually relied on intuition more than any other factor in determining their biggest decisions in companies. So a lot of them tend to gather a lot of data, or, you know, if you say, instead of looking at 5 cards, maybe they're looking at 5,000 components, and it's almost impossible to come to an accurate conclusion because you could make very logical arguments both for and against almost any decision inside the company. You know, as a lot of graduate students understand, is like, well, if you want to prove anything, you can find supporting evidence for virtually almost any topic or subject. So where is truth in that? And the best CEOs actually rely on intuition. The best athletes rely on intuition. And I think some of our greatest decisions or our greatest challenges is to, you know, go with our gut, what quote unquote our gut. But what is that? What is this sense of I that seems to exist outside the physical domain? Because I know here you were traveling down this road in kind of this, you know, you're always kind of treading on both sides of the equation since I've known you. You're in Duke, something happened, and then your whole life changed.
Well said, Wade. I think that the journey kept continuing because at Duke, I did pre-med, and then I studied, I found the pre-med just wasn't addressing everything I thought was possible in healing and medicine. And so I started with my mentor there, a mind-body medicine study group. And at the time, Duke thought that was like blasphemy. Even the dean of medical education thought, like, what is this? You know, we don't. And yet 10 years later, 20 years later, Duke starts his own mind-body department. So, you know, that was my own intuition to follow. But, you know, in that process, we brought speakers to campus, chi workers, you know, structural integration therapists, medical intuitives. I met Norm Shealy there. He started, he was a neurosurgeon who did medical intuitive work with Carolyn Mace. I met him during a conference. Elmer Green, the biofeedback innovator. But even he has stories behind him that he was guided by, you know, knowledge and beings that defied rationality. So I think I was just stewing in that constantly. So, continuing on with this journey, I worked at the Monroe Institute for a while, and
fascinating place.
Listeners might love this place. So Monroe Institute is an important part of this discussion because it is a central point of discussion that kind of started this brain tech revolution, if you will, which is very relevant to what we're talking about, and we'll explain in a moment. You know, Robert Monroe was this normal left brain guy, video executive who during the day he would fall asleep and take a nap, right? Siestas, right? Why not? So what happened is in the middle of the day, he would find himself floating over his body. He's like, wait, what? Am I dead? No, I'm alive. And then he'd wake up and he's still in his body. But that happened a few different times and he thought he was going crazy. He actually went to Duke, to JB Rhine, to check this guy out and to see if he was normal. And all the doctors said nothing was wrong with him. So these journeys kept developing. He would start leaving his body, if you will, at night and journeying to other realms. And he wrote books about this called Journeys Out of the Body, Far Journeys, and Ultimate Journeys. Now, I had the privilege of meeting this guy, and he was out of this world, literally. I shook his hand, and my hand buzzed. Like, I thought he had an electrical buzzer in his hand, like the kind you get in a comic store that would shock you. But so I knew he was a very special man. I was their first and only undergraduate intern. It was an absolute blast working there because they worked with sounds and they did this hemisync technology. And the simple explanation for that is hemisync is using the brain as a way of hacking the brain, playing two different sounds, one in each ear, and the brain hears the difference in the frequencies and uses that to follow the sounds to go into an altered state beyond our normal waking state. So I did a workshop with them called the Gateway Voyage. They had comped me, and we actually had a Wall Street executive there and psychics and researchers from around the world. It was such an amazing time there. And I had my first real experience of this where we're listening to these sounds and we're doing this guided journey, if you will, through these sound patterns. And I literally, they call it resonant toning. So I was tuning along with these sounds and literally I saw what looked like my body, but it was glowing. And later I understood that to be like our energy body, if you will. That's the understanding in the literature. So that was one of many glimpses along the way that we're much more than our physical body. And that was Robert Monroe's teaching from day one. We are more than our physical body. So I was never the same after that. I could never go down a conventional allopathic path, if you will. I love all forms of medicine. I mean, conventional medicine saved my life twice, but it was naturopathic and holistic medicine that put me back together again. So the two are like friends together.
I think that's a very important message for people because there's so many people in conventional medicine and then or alternative or natural medicine or holistic medicine, whatever you ever call it. And they're always for a great number of people, they're bad mouthing and bashing the other, which in fact, I think they're just, two ways of trying to help people who are having challenges in their life. And conventional seems to be very good in short-term interventionary. You're dying, you need a situation, there's something, you need a surgery, you're in a car accident, you're going to die because of something, and that may be genetic or whatever. And you repair that. In other words, you put the machine, okay, we patched it up, we glued it together, we took out with the bad piece. But really, in order to really optimize it or treat what the issue was before, or to get to the core of the issue, whether that's psychological, whether that's nutritive, whether it's some other biological system, I think the holistic side offers some other choices. You want to talk about how that journey kind of led to the next piece, the next few chapters in your very storied life?
So the next chapter was I had wanted to take a different path, and I realized the conventional mind, conventional understanding, my vision was larger than that. And I wanted to continue. So I pursued a doctorate in consciousness studies, transpersonal psychology. And that was at Saybrook University with my great dear friend, mentor, Stanley Krippner, who's like a Yoda, you know.
Can you explain to people what transpersonal psychology is? They might not know what that is.
Yeah, so William James was a Harvard psychologist who had a great perception of psychology that goes beyond simply our understanding of behavioral and cognitive. It's more just who we are and what we think. It includes experiences like dreams, ESP, parapsychology, sixth sense. It includes the space between us, altered states of consciousness, the superconscious, the subconscious. You know, it's the entire realm of psychology that is, let's say, the entire spectrum, if you will, and not simply the few points of rationality we understand of who we think we are. So why is that so important right now and today? Because when I did real estate, I was doing real estate while I was attending grad school at the time. I bought my first house for $100, by the way. And
wow.
That helped me understand I was on my path when something that amazing happened. And I got a thank you letter from the guy for doing that. I started, I was starting kind of crossing paths right now. So I would buy a home, and then I would talk to my friend who actually did intuitive consulting work for the CEO of Sony and Bill Gates. And
it's amazing. By the way, I think it's amazing how many people at the highest levels leverage intuitives, or what quote unquote some people might call psychologists, or people out of kind of like the very far left field. What it could be astrologists, it could be numerologists, it could be, all of these kind of occult type things that are poo-pooed. I know a lot of CEOs and a lot of heads of companies and stuff, and almost all of them have some go-to mystical people that are on their Rolodex as much as their accountants and lawyers.
This is what I call decision augmentation technology, DAT.
That's
decision
beautiful.
Augmentation technology. So we're relying on additional sources of information to help make decisions and not excluding anything initially. That's the creative process. That's a creative journey. So I was hungry for that. And transpersonal psychology taught me how other cultures actually use dreams as part of their decisioning. In Korea, the Middle East, people sit around the breakfast table having dreams. In fact, if your sister or brother is going to, if your sister will conceive, often a family member will have a dream to give them. Fancy that. A family member will actually have a precognitive dream about the childbirth before it actually happens. Mm-hmm. So my thinking is practical. It's a bridge building. I like to build bridges and connect different worlds. So I thought, how can we apply that? So I actually did my doctoral work on prophetic or predictive dreams in real estate. Wow. So here we are combining these worlds.
Wow, that's pretty far out.
Dreams about the home before they bought the house. Wow. And
which is actually quite common.
Yes. And yet we don't always acknowledge it. One of my dear friends and my mentor at Duke, Larry Burke, he had wrote a book called Adventures of a Holistic Radiologist, and he interviewed patients who had dreams about breast cancer before they had it. And their dreams were more predictive, if you will, than the mammogram. The dreams were important source of information and wisdom. So once more, it's about how can we apply these phenomenal, extraordinary human experiences back down to the practical. So the next step in my journey happened, ironically, I was studying to become a brain surgeon at Duke. Initially, that was my plan. And I just found, my vision was larger than that, if you will. And yet I still had my contacts. So here I go. I graduated with my PhD in transpersonal psychology, having had these amazing insights and experiences. And I was in a horrible car crash. A car crashed into me. Amazingly, I rolled out of the thing. And I thought I was okay. About a year later, started having the worst headaches of my life. And I kept ignoring them. Like, they're going to go away. Think positive, right? Bypassing, think positive. But it didn't get any better. And I went to the hospital. The hospital checked me out. And they said, "Sir, you don't have food poisoning. You have a strange anomaly in the middle of your brain." I said, "No, I don't. I'm in perfect health." They said, "Well, maybe that's why it hasn't killed you yet, but we need to take care of this." So suddenly my reality warbled into a meltdown, and I had to undergo emergency brain surgery.
So not only did you study brain surgery, you actually became the patient, which I find is ironic. What happened after that? Because I know that was a pretty jarring experience in your life, and led to some other, I think, some discoveries. And I think I want to, before you kind of go into that, some of the challenges that happened were significant. And I think what's amazing is how you took those challenges and just reworked them in a really beautiful, magnificent way into your current career. So I think for anybody listening that's going through a very big physical challenge or a medical challenge or a health challenge or a relationship challenge, recognize that although you can't always change the situation, you can change how you perceive the situation. And if you perceive the situation in a different way, that it's an opportunity on some level, it can completely transform your life. So with all that, go ahead and kind of share what happened to you, because wow, it was a rocket ride.
Amen. I mean, there's so much more to say. So again, we're just giving big picture here, but the chief of neurosurgery came in and, explained the chances of life versus death, because the location was so precarious that, he invented the surgery to actually do this thing. And he's the chief of neurosurgery. So, I mustered every resource I possibly could. I had friends, I had healers, I had people who were energy workers pray constantly around the world for me, because, there have been studies about even the Maharishi effect, the studies in cardiology of patients getting prayed for and the outcomes of that. So I invoked every possible resource I could inside myself to make sure I had the best journey possible. And then there was
a key element if you're up against challenges is get every resource you can that will support you.
Exactly. And then I also surrendered to this medicine. I realized this is the best medicine this world has at this point for this particular ailment. I analyzed the risks and benefits. I mean, I know about John of God. I was thinking about going there, but the risks of leaving the hospital bed and this thing blew up, it wasn't worth it. So, thinking pragmatically as well as intuitively is important to know how to have the right discernment for that. So funny thing is, the procedure was about 7 hours, and becoming a full-fledged brain surgeon takes 7 years. So I had a 7-year download of what would have in basically 7 hours. So it was a 7-hour brain surgery, and I had what one would consider a near-death experience, an NDE in the literature. And basically that means, by classical definition, that's when one is dead or near death at some form for a prolonged period of time beyond the normal limits of the physicality, and they have powerful dissociative experiences. Some people, see the light, some people see colors, some people see angels. My experience was that of realizing or feeling, but more of like realizing that the entire life of this historical Dr. Stefan, because the doctor is just a label, Stefan's just a label, who we are goes way beyond that, and beyond even the description of the words. So my entire life just became like a bubble, and it just sort of burst. And there wasn't even a sense of, man, I'm dead. It was just, wow. And there was just a sense of observing and awareness and such an intense feeling of light, if you will, love. It was almost painful. There's a Sufi saying about the 70,000 veils to God, that if you actually saw God in his or her pure form, your face would burn up. So we have these layers preventing us from seeing what the truth really is. So somehow it was my sense of a glimpse, but there really wasn't any thinking involved. It was just pure sense of experience. And there was no sense of time. That thing could have been 1,000 years, 1 year, one moment. I had no idea. But that moment is still with me, and it made me realize that, we have a lot more to this world that's not just seen. There's the unseen world. And, I gradually came back into this body, and I remember kind of having this realization, oh, there's a body to come back to. But it wasn't a me, it was just a pull to go back into it. And then waking up and going, like waking up and saying, what is this thing now? And it wasn't operating the way I think I would have wanted it to, because it was just operated on and under anesthesia. So the body wasn't working. And I really felt the distinction between the essence in infusing the body and the body itself. So to me, in healing, I realized we need to address both facets. The raw materials, which is what you and your team are exceptional with, Wade, is infusing the body with the right raw materials, as well as the top down, what energy, what prayers, what spirituality, what consciousness we're infusing ourselves with to animate that, working both. And in the middle, that's where the human is. That's where the magic is. And the heart is the middle of the body, the middle chakra, if you will, that is the bridge that connects all the two. And that's where some of the magic happens. So it really was an incredible healing journey to get back and recover and rejuvenate. So another thing I discovered was, I'm like, who are these other people? I know the hospital actually said, Like, we're amazed. We've never seen anyone recover that quickly and be able to walk again and just get your ass out of the hospital. Some people spend months there with a surgery like that, even if they even make it through. So, you know, really going through that hellacious place and having the faith of being able to pull myself out of it gradually, you know, that's where the rubber really hits the road. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really where the rubber hits the road.
And then so you kind of went on. So what was the next phase of your career after the recovery of that, which took some time?
These things are taking a mortal blow to the body is no huge feat. I mean, the Sanskrit scholar I was talking to calls it karmic. So there's multiple definitions or discussions what that's about. But, you know, I really was taking charge of my self-healing. So I realized, like, what are the natural resources I can use now that the body mechanically got fixed? How do I put it back together again? And I saw the power of naturopathic medicine through the physicians I saw. And also I met this gentleman who was born 1901. I met at a raw food gathering, if you will. And he was a speaker. And at the time he was a speaker, I thought he was like 54.
Yeah, he's a pretty amazing individual. I've had the good opportunity meeting our friend there, and it's remarkable, his cognitive capacity, his vitality, his health. And what did you learn from this centurion?
Some of the transmissions that happen when you work and study with someone go way beyond the words. I mean, certainly he had great genes, but he did the most of it. He wasn't just like his son, who he outlived. When his son died when he was 80, because the son smoked and partied too much. And those are risk factors. And now modernly, we know epigenetics is the way our body and our mind talks to our genes and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So he made the most of his genetics. He ate phenomenally well, and he built what I consider his brain bank and his body bank. So this is a really important concept, because a lot of the things we know we need to do for our health don't always seem so subtle. Do some yoga. Well, I don't know if that's going to help me today or tomorrow, but he did these practices every single day of his life. He was very religious and spiritual. He prayed every day, read the scripture. He contemplated on whatever was meaningful and divine to him. And he exercised every day, like religiously. And he also ate phenomenally well every day, very disciplined in that. But I think that he built his physiological data bank without taxing it. He kept adding his physiological wealth. It's like your retirement account, if you will, but it's a biological bank account, and he kept building that. And that's a really critical concept I want to convey, because he did that year after year and lived a phenomenal life right up till 114, I believe.
Incredible.
Right? And looked half his age.
Yeah, he looked phenomenal.
So the other thing I learned in the process, and curiously, you know, when I was coming back from that surgery and recovering, I realized, I got this realization, was a dream and intuition. Can we really talk to our DNA?
Right.
Can we really communicate with it?
Correct.
Now we're having a lot of various science coming out, but the thing is, we don't necessarily need to wait for science before we can do something. Let us be the explorers. Let us be the experimenters. Let us be the pioneers if we feel guided to. And I realized that I could actually meditate and connect with the DNA. I actually did a podcast with Namaste Publishing on that. They did work with Eckhart Tolle about how you can communicate with your DNA and maximize its physiological expression.
I remember one of our earliest meetings, you and I had a discussion. It was in Sedona, Arizona. And our discussions when we meet up are always very animated and fun, and covering a wide range of topics. It's a really playful yet, I would say, inspiring and thought-provoking conversations. And you told me this, one of the things is you look incredibly young for your age. And I'm not going to say your age on here, but it's shocking for most people, and they would never guess your age. And I remember this conversation, and you said, well, I actually just told my DNA that we're going to change its aging process, you know. And I thought, what a great idea. Tell me more. So tell us more how that process came, and how did you come to that conclusion? It definitely seems to be working. So I think there's probably millions around the world that would like to save the trip to the drugstore for the latest oil of delay, and tap into what's maybe possible with your with what you've done.
Well, wait, I mean, we wouldn't necessarily have all the time we'd need to go into the specifics of that. But the big picture for me is the biology of belief. Bruce Lipton wrote about how we can communicate to our body and connect with it and affirm who and what we are. So in any of these journeys we're embarking on, we need to have a very clear and strong intention, and have a means by which we're going to connect with ourselves more deeply to help reprogram ourselves. So this to me is about inner engineering and also outer engineering, how to optimize our internal environment and how to optimize our external environment to support that. The connection to the DNA is really a meditation about going deep and getting out of our mind, our busy mind, into our deeper states of awareness. Right now currently we operate in a beta state, but beta frequencies, that's the predominant, but then we want to get into an alpha, a theta or a delta state, which is what I do in the brain spas I'm developing, is giving people a chance to get out of their conventional busy mind and experience a greater sense of themselves, so they can access that discussion they have with their DNA, if you will, on how to do that. And this
for those of us who want to know more about the different brain states, you can refer back to the other podcast that we did with my co-founder Matt Gallant on the various brain states and what they correlate to in regard. We won't go into all the details today, but keep on going.
And I realize life is a hypnosis, if you will. We're hypnotized into thinking we are an individual person, that we're born and then we actually die. Who's the we? Who's the I that's who's the I that's even commenting on this? Certainly journeying out of the body, certainly seeing all these experiences and still having some sense of awareness, whether this body was getting operated on or not, told me that we're more than we think we are. So that kind of hypnosis can work both ways. We can hypnotize ourselves to say, I don't get old. I have birthdays or rebirth days or cellular continuation days. And instead of thinking, how old are you? Because that's a cultural hypnosis or programming of old. How many times has your body evolved around the sun? Really? What is your physiological age versus your chronological age?
Correct.
And then each year is a celebration of how many years you've been 25 or 30 or 40. There needs to be some plausibility that your system has to buy it, or some of it, but you can start inching it back. So again, the teaching is simple, but the executions, it's huge. It's a very huge endeavor, if you will. And each belief takes at least 21 days to program for it to become active in your system. So you'll know when you can buy into that. They're like, I connect with a part of me that feels 25, by divine grace. This is all by, whatever mystery that brought us here, that continues us. How much are we really in control of any of that? So it's really also acknowledging that, we do our part, and then that mystery does the rest. We do our part, which is the raw materials you provide. I mean, those are important tools for the telomeres, for the epigenetics, for the proper methylation, for people to stay young as long as possible.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: how to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat, or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
So let's talk about you. You then journeyed into the realm of naturopathic medicine and started studying in Arizona in regards to that. You want to explain a little bit about that? And then
absolutely, Wade, because I love teaching and speaking. When I did real estate, people tapped me on the shoulder and saying, how did you do what you do? You bought a house for $100 and figured out a way to sell it in a weekend, and you do these house clearings and the house sells faster. How do you do what you do? So I started teaching seminars, and I wanted to take Bernardo, my friend, to teach seminars. We spoke at the Raw Spirit Festival. We did an event at Sedona Creative Life Center. Oprah had called him, and we were discussing should he be on or not. He just did not want the publicity, which is just crazy. But I could also understand, you're a $110, a $112, and you just don't need the extra PR. You don't need the stress. And he's lived a fulfilled life, so I get it. It's pretty amazing. I was continuing on this journey. We did events, health events, and there were questions I didn't know the answer to. And I sort of literally stumbled on the campus in Tempe, Arizona, Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, and was like, maybe this is where I need to be next. And I wanted to rehabilitate myself. Anytime there's a major trauma that happens with the body, we need to learn new skills. It's important we challenge ourselves and put ourselves into a new groove, because it's a new chapter of life. Life continues. So it was a natural resonance, and I was willing to embark on that journey. And actually, I did all the pre-med work beforehand. So when I was in naturopathic school, I discovered, the best of both worlds is what I think we as naturopaths do. We're like the last of the Mohicans in some way, because, there's 5,000 or 6,000 of us licensed in the States. It's not that many. And yet we have certain solutions that the mainstream doesn't. Even this philosophy of teaching, of going to the root cause, of looking at the baseline, of establishing the foundations of health, looking at the obstacle to cure, like a very systematic way of thinking, that pharmacology and surgery are the last 2 points of that. You reserve those for the last. There's so many things you can do beforehand. So I just love the way it was thinking. And we're actually looked at nature as a curative force inside of ourselves, not thinking we're a machine needs to be fixed, but just the fact that we're a vital force that operating our body, and that we can work with. So, I still had the passion of being on the edge there at SCNM. So I heard this doctor speak about indigenous shamanism and Amazonian plant medicine. And I attended this talk at a local botanical store, and I was so blown away by what this guy was doing. He's an MD who was disgruntled as a medical student, wanted more. When he was depressed in med school, they wanted to give him Prozac, and he was not finding that acceptable. So he wanted to look at what botanical options are there. Psilocybin was what came up because it was not so harmful, and he went to his roots. So he traveled back to Colombia, started looking at shamans and healers, and literally co-founded a healing center with an indigenous shaman, indigenous curandero, a medicine man, their traditions have done this for thousands of years. And I heard that, and I even heard the science of what Dr. Tafur was talking about, and it made sense on so many levels. And there's a part of me, here we go about intuition. You listen when you're on the path, you're like, I've got to do that.
Correct.
Whatever it is, I feel that resonance. So, like life's this river, like sometimes we're on the edge and sometimes we just have to dive right into it. I have to do that. And that's sort of what began this journey, because I went down there in the summer as a med student, and I got all my clinical hours done early. And I didn't tell anyone, because I didn't know if I was going to come back or live through it. I didn't want to bring anyone. This was my journey. I had to go there first, check it out. And it was like going from the Matrix into the Avatar.
It's a very good description, I think, for people who might not be familiar with plant medicine and some of the opportunities. I've long been an advocate of leveraging plant medicines, traditional pathways, which have been used literally for thousands of years in cultures around the world. One of the primary cultures who integrated this into, society is in South America, in these type of indigenous tribes who had very profound traditions and an extremely robust knowledge of the effects of plants. They're, both for treating medical conditions, but also I think what's really interesting is leveraging and treating us on the more human level, that more internal relationship that we have with ourselves, the psychology, the emotionality, the spirituality, as just as robust or just as important, if not more important, than what was actually happening out here on the physical plane. So you went down literally into the Amazon, and you're having this experience. What happened for you there, and how did that lead to your work today?
Well, I would say it was incredibly profound. It really coming into the lungs of Mother Earth, unplugging from the cell phone, the Matrix world, was such an insane revelation. I didn't even know what I didn't even know. A part of me knew, which is why I felt so called to go. But as soon as I got there, it was like I could actually breathe for the first time. I could actually smell for the first time. I mean, as a kid, I could feel the energy of the trees, and I don't know what to make of it. And now we research that trees are so incredibly intelligent with each other that they, their roots literally, you have these trees in Muir Woods, California, out in this Bay Area. Some of the trees are up to 1,000 years old. And how do they survive all the forests, the earthquakes, whatever, the weather extremes, thousands for this years? The roots literally entwine and touch each other, and they can communicate along each other. So I realized, and I literally felt in my body and my cells, that I was plugging into this vast cosmic supercomputer, and it was like I was getting upgraded or something. So there's it's literally beyond description. And yet I also realized there's other times in my life I felt that too. During my healing journey, Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda landed in my lap, literally.
Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know who he is, he was the first yogi to come from the East, came in 1920s to the West, and is often considered the father of Western yoga philosophy, where he was maybe the first person to actually live extensively in the West. He wrote a book called Autobiography of a Yogi. He was the inspiration for my own spiritual journey. He also appeared to me in a vision a long time ago. I don't really talk about that too much in the public, but inspired me to learn about some of the philosophies which have existed for thousands of years, and a yogic practice, meditation practice, and very deep knowledge about what makes a human, a spirit, a soul, a soul. And we share that common bond. And so here Yogananda plops into your lap as well. And what happened there?
I was sitting in his temple, if you will, on one Sunday, and literally it felt like I was getting plugged into some computer, that I was a little cell in a larger organism, a feeling of unity or oneness that resembled the feeling I had during the surgery. And, the conscious between having a sense of oneness and then feeling like I'm in this separate body, which wasn't working that well and was in a lot of pain. But Yogananda sort of connected me back into that. And then, which led me into another feeling of, the Amma and the Hugging Saint. Some of your listeners may know about her. She's this amazing awakened master, if you will, who does amazing humanitarian work, barely eats and sleeps, and they've recorded her, like documented her hugging at least 30 million people over the past 30 years.
And people have profound effects.
Profound experiences.
By just getting a hug from this lady, they change, their lives change, their whole perspective on things change. Like it's a phenomenal experience how she can stand all day long without rest and just hug person after person, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people travel from all over to just get a hug from this lady. And it's phenomenal what you have. And again, we're not here to talk about things that are hocus pocus or out there. We're here to inspire our listeners to say, hey, it isn't all A goes to B goes to C. There is this other interconnective web of life or existence or what that goes beyond our conditioned hypnotic trends of what we've been force-fed in a lot of things to say this is what is and this is how it is, and anything outside of that is worth investigation. And that's just so boring and lame. It leads to a very drab and a very what I would say boxed in lifestyle, which you and I are definitely not in support of. So
which reminds me of Krishnamurti. Jivan Krishnamurti said the saying, "It is no measure of health to be profoundly well adjusted to a sick society." So,
that's great.
You're too normal, you're almost normopathic instead of psychopathic. So
right.
It's really about discovering our own authenticity. And these are bits of my authentic journey. And where I felt profound experiences that I felt changed me. So, someone listening to this will have a resonance in certain aspects and go, I may want to check that out. And even our conversation here is nonlinear for a very special reason, because, we think we're going from point A to point B and point C in life, but who actually says life is and time is in a straight line? You know,
there's no evidence of straight lines occurring naturally in nature. It's
correct.
Which is interesting. Which
So,
we got these ideas that we need to build box houses and square computers and everything. This is a really interesting component of humanity. We're creating these, square dimensional or boxed in dimensional kind of ideas. Yet you don't see this anywhere in nature, and you certainly don't see it in a lot of the indigenous structures and styles of life, which tend to be much more robust.
And back to the world of indigenous cultures, they had it figured out. Their system was absolutely figured out. I mean, I was able to get into this very deep path. They put me in a hut inside the jungle, the way a traditional shaman would be trained. And the life of the shaman is somebody who can traverse altered, non-ordinary states of awareness and bring back information to benefit their people, their culture, or their tribe. Mm-hmm. So, here I am, I go out there, and what I experienced there was so profound that I came back and started talking about it with my classmates. And then suddenly people were like, I want to go. Wait, why don't you bring me? I want to go. And so was born an annual expedition, culture geared around medical education, to wanting to expand. Imagine a practitioner, you have a profound experience of nature and healing that blows your mind. You come back, every life after that, you will touch differently. You will see life from a different perspective. And that's what happened to the nearly 100 people I brought there with me. And I'm very, very selective about who I have accompanying me on these journeys. I do keep it intimate and small for that reason, because it's about a very high touch, high quality, transformative experience.
It's a sacred experience. If there's ever a good way to the world to address it, I think that is what sacred is. It's about a conscious, very intimate environment where one can really let go of, I would say, sometimes the grandstanding of our egos and lives and how they're structured and format, and to get into a place in such a radical environment, I think also is important in the transformative experience, to break away from our conditioned representative who navigates the world, versus what we could potentially be, and what capacities that we can activate within the human condition that have, for largely part in the Western world, been forgotten or shunned away or discredited, which are very rich in these type of cultures.
Which is why, connecting back to transpersonal psychology created a framework for how these extraordinary things can happen, how Bernardo can live to 114, how Hira Ratan Manek, who I met at a conference, he was the world's longest supervised medical fast, like 300 days, and he stared at the sun. How a being could, stay awake all night and not tire and just love people to pieces and do it nonstop. So these are extraordinary examples, and yet, these are also possible within our ordinary ways of living. So, this is the beautiful implicate order of our consciousness, that certainly my studies, my rigorous studies, because I wanted to be as disciplined as possible. I didn't just want to go native. I wanted to have a good scientific reason why I'm going native. And I feel, we have science supporting us. We really have science supporting us in this. I mean, there's so much more to say that time wouldn't permit, but it's, that this is also, these particular journeys I've taken and guided to the Amazon weren't just about experiencing the sacred medicine. It's also about bonding and having a cross-cultural experience with tribes and tribal customs that are soon going extinct. You see, our Amazon is burning up. And some of these tribes have been mistreated by the government or not even recognized. So how do we, not only take ourselves in this journey, but connect to a part of ourselves of this planet that is going extinct if we're not going to save it? So if you go down there and have a genuine experience, you might feel inspired to pay it forward somehow. Perhaps, assist with some of the land we're trying to secure for the tribe. Document it somehow, exchange something with the tribe. I know the Durango Tribune wrote an amazing article about the tribe that, oh, and by the way, this is one of my beautiful garments that I purchased. It's more of like a, we'll call it, it's a large tapestry that the Shipibo artists had drawn. And the amazing story about that, which was also described in one of the articles, is that you see all the different colors, and these colors represent music. They represent the way they see the world. You can have two Shipibo people sew a garment like this, and literally they could almost do it blindfolded, and they would know the exact song, if you will, that they would sew it. And you show the locals there, they would go, oh, that's ayahuasca, or that's chacruna, for example. These are songs of the plants, if you will. So here we go. In biology, you have chromatography. You can actually extract the components of a plant. And also, if you take DNA and put it to musical notes, it sounds like Chopin. And this was, Jeremy Narby discussed this in his work about the DNA and the cosmic serpent, about information being contained inside the DNA. So my speculation and my wild speculation is connecting with these indigenous tribes has ancient wisdom for us to really connect who we are beyond what we know as books. There's memories of who we are that we forgot. There's parts of our DNA that aren't active yet, that are stories in there that I feel we get to access through the bioluminescence. Because during these ceremonies, I'd have, like vivid dreams, but they would almost like see glowing colors and lights. So who is that and what is that? I think this is produced from within our own bodies. And this is helping us connect with a deeper essence of who we are. And this is a clue. This is a clue because you ask some of these tribes where they came from, they're like, we came from up here. We came from the stars. We came from out of time. We always existed. They have the Star Wars type of hero's journey and mythology about who they are. And, there's no description of how special it is to connect to that.
Well said and very beautiful. And of course, if people are looking for scientific validation, back in the early 1900s, in Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda documents his journeys. One of his scientific researchers, J.C. Chandra Bose, who had developed the crescograph that actually demonstrated that plants have a communication structure. They feel pain, they feel suffering, they live, and they can actually communicate. And my mom, to take this to the very practical, who is a wonderful, very simple lady and an extraordinary gardener who loves to spend time in her garden growing plants, putting her hands in the soil. And she talks to the plants, and it's been proven now that communicating with your plants directly has a definitive effect on the health of the plant. And of course, that plant also has a definitive effect on us as a physiology. There's an interconnectedness that we eat the plants, and eventually when we die, the plants eat us. And so it's a much more
symbiotic relationship. It's a symbiosis.
Yeah. And of course, traditional indigenous tribes would oftentimes take moments to honor whether it was an animal that they had killed to consume or a plant that they had killed to consume. There was an honoring and a sacredness of it and a recognition of the circle of life and the connectionness of this. And I think it's phenomenal when you talk about ayahuasca and that particular plant. And it's a combination of plants, and it's different in different places, but those plants on their own are poison. They would hurt you, but in combination, they evoke these very unique aspects of consciousness. And when they were asked, how did we discover this? And the odds of discovering that these two plants together work is some ridiculous mathematical probability that wouldn't possibly happen. But it was the plants that talked to people, the people, and brought this out. And then this has a profound effect. And now we're seeing the spread thanks to the internet. Previously hidden knowledge to colonialism, Western civilization, the scientific paradigm per se, is what some people would call simple indigenous tribes have this profound understanding, knowledge, and an ability to take anyone to start to experience these truths for themselves, these experiential realities that are undeniable. And they're not like, we're not talking hallucinogenics, we're talking ethnobotanicals, which are very, very different. A hallucination is something that you cannot stop. And it's like, someone that's challenged on the street would be having a hallucination, where in these type of visionary experiences, oftentimes you can communicate with that person. They can open their eyes and be present. They can close their eyes and be in another place. How did these experiences impact you and impact some of the naturopathic physicians that were coming down to experiencing these things, and why do you feel so strongly of why this is so important to get this message out to people today?
Great questions, Wade. I would say for me, it really connected me with my own bioluminescence, if you will. And when I came back the first time, people were like, "You were glowing. What's going on? How was your?" And then I brought my other classmates with me, and they came back glowing. So people really saw a profound cleanse and detoxification of depuration that happened in their body. And this is a critical point in our evolution right now, that we have so much toxicity from every angle, air, water, food, that unless we're actively taking steps to detoxify, purify on every level, we're heading in the opposite direction. I mean, the ecosystem's at risk for that. So to me, it just gave such a profound, direct experience of truth and light, love, beauty, that was not influenced by, the matrix or the media or what we're told to think. A direct experience. I couldn't help but want to share that. And some of the journeys I've experienced were so profound, and I've captured them. I've written them down that, when I came back and shared them with people, they're like, "Whoa, you went and experienced that, really?" So, it was just very illuminating internally. So it's also to me about the purity of this. I'm a purist when it comes to these experiences. I'm not actually a fan, Wade, and not everyone would agree with me, but I'm not a fan of going to your friend's house and ordering ayahuasca on the internet and doing that. I don't think it's a wise idea. I do support education around it. I don't necessarily believe in like over restriction. I think in responsible use. But to me, the difference between even somewhere local and journeying, going on your hero's journey properly to the source of where something got innovated, and having a direct cultural transmission, a direct nature earth transmission of that wisdom, of that energy, is incomparable. It's like watching IMAX or a black and white movie. So I got a sense of something extremely real and precious that I wanted to preserve and wanted to, continue. Which
speaking of that, just as a side note, almost every tradition throughout history has put forth the value of going on, some people call it a sadhana or your Mecca moment, or some sort of journey. And it's represented, as you said, in Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. I think he documented over 200 different versions of basically the same thing, which he boiled down to the same essential story. Life's kind of ordinary. Something happens, some sort of chaos happens in your local thing. There's some resistance. You go off, you face a bunch of obstacles. You fight the big dark, issue that is in your life represented as a dragon. You overcome that. And then you return home with knowledge, wisdom, and perspective, often at a certain price. And that is kind of the journey, and it's honored in virtually every culture. What makes it so powerful with what's happening in the Amazon with these people and what they have to offer the world?
Because you're earning it. You're earning it.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just follow your bliss. This is get in there, get down and dirty, work with your shadow, work with your traumas, work with what's difficult in your life. Get to face the demons that have been plaguing you or haunting you. I mean, this is not a vacation. If someone wants to go, get a massage, go down the street, get a massage. But if you want, to be able to really wring your life inside and out and exercise the demons, if you will, literally and figuratively, the things I've seen look like some very powerful exorcisms, which to me simply is returning the darkness back into the light with awareness and light and love. There's no comparison for that. You have to earn it. You really do. And it's about sacrifice. You're giving up yourself on your familiar comforts. We sleep on a jungle floor, in a hut with bugs biting you sometimes. But, if you think positive, bugs are less likely to bite you. So I wouldn't worry about that. Having a purge, having a very clean dieta, really making true changes and reflecting on your life, seeing what doesn't work, and being shown, in the silence, in the gaps, who and what you really are outside of who you're told. So these are such profound things that can happen there when one's putting in the work and stepping out of something very familiar to lock you back into the pattern of who we think you are. So, and also the integration before, during, and after. There's preparation before, there's a support during, and there's the integration after, which is very different from, going down the street and having an experience at your friend's house and thinking you had it. this really is about, having a rite of passage that is not ordinarily available to us, because in some ways our life is difficult, but it's also kind of easy. You can skip through some of these developmental things, but in the tribal sense, they're connected to the earth. Their very survival depends on how connected they are to who they are and their world around them.
Yeah, profound. It's really inspiring, and I love the fact that the internet is actually, ironically, this technical development in the digital world has opened up what I would say a more, I don't know what the word spiritual is the word I would use, but certainly a rich and more interiorized life than we see than the externalized life that many of us are living today. Tell me what's happening now for you, because you've kind of taken this to the next level. Not what I love about what you do, Dr. Stefan, is that it's not enough for you to go through your own experience. You then go off and you really you don't just take what you get and say, oh, that was a cool experience. Like, no, you get into the mechanics of it, the physiology of the experience, the biochemistry of the experience, the spirituality, the psychology of the experience. I mean, you really drink the whole gourd full. Like every drop is put through you, and then you have this beautiful way of integrating this in a very, I would say, attractive way to the world, and sharing that. And I believe that you are now engaged in that right now, about sharing the value of what's happening in the Amazon and what we can do about it, as well as some of the things of how you're bringing back some of the wisdom there and planting it into the Western world, so that we can hear that are, in the Western world, we can take advantage of this ancient wisdom and these practices that I think make us all a little bit more human.
Well said, Wade. Thank you so much for that. I would say that my interests, I'm an experiencer and an explorer, and I like to share the jewels, if you will, and make them more readily and easily accessible. I mean, you can Google Amazon, journeys, and find somebody you think and go down there, but you don't know who they are. You don't know if it's safe. People have gotten hurt with stuff like that. So I like to be able to, if I've taken a few steps and the path is a little clearer and I can offer value, I am delighted to share it and make that be fruitful, multiplying. I mean, I have a lot to say, and I know we're coming to a close here shortly, that there's no possible we can cover this in one podcast. I mean, this is a big picture view, but the future of healthcare, the future of medicine is value-based. It is not patient-based, not one at a time. So I'm looking at ways how to deliver value, enriching, life-enriching, transformative experiences into your life, not just seeing me or any one person one at a time. Plus, there's only one of me. How many people can I possibly see in a week, a day, a month, a year? How do we multiply that value? So guiding extraordinary, transformative journeys that are medically supervised, that are cultural exchanged, that have all the right perfect elements in there to change your life and take you on that hero's journey is one aspect of it, and that's into the Amazon, which just continues. I have upcoming excursions that are scheduled, and I want to take it to the next level, which is also helping these tribes secure land, helping us build a retreat, a cross-cultural center, so expats can live there. We can preserve their medicine and have an exchange of that. So this is fourth sector work. Fourth sector work is about taking market entrepreneurialism and applying it into socially responsible venues and sectors. So that's evolved in a few different categories. The concept of a healthy home makeover and home health spa. So, I've constantly worked with people's homes. I must have bought and sold or worked with over 100 deals, if not more, and advised other students on how to do their deals. And I find a lot of people were out of tune with their environment. For that reason, they were losing their home. They were losing it to foreclosure. That's a distunement. But then also, how can we maximize your home environment? Make sure the feng shui is right. Make sure you don't have mold. Make sure you have the right environment, the materials inside your home, the right food, the right bedding, you don't have EMF pollution. So, it's a multi-point checklist of how to optimize your environment. And the home health spa concept is, how do you take the tools you like and bring them and put them in your home in a way that makes sense to you? Like, I have a brain tap machine I work with in the morning, in addition to a daily routine that I'm insisting I go walk to the beach. I have a daily yoga, meditation, prayer routine. It's called chanting Archana, chanting the names of the divine. You have to find what works for you. And I'm delighted working with people collaborating as a think tank now to incubate these ideas and roll them out into the world. So even working with an investment bank that I find does quad bottom line. It can take your dream into a reality by working with you on your spiritual, your economic, your social, and your environmental levels.
Really, what you represent from all I've known you is kind of a new paradigm of where science, spirituality, Western kind of traditional ideas and scientific method meet with indigenous or Eastern philosophical ideas. And you've kind of put them in this kind of beautiful tapestry like the one you have behind you in a very unusual life. You're a credible practitioner in the Western world, and you're deeply, I think maybe even a greater practitioner in what I would call the world of mysticism. You're kind of like the modern day scientific mystic who is offering practical solutions from non-linear traditions, because you just are not limited by anybody's definition of what is, but there is certainly an inclination and a desire to help others on their own journey. Where are you these days? Where are you living? Where can people find you? How do they get access to what you provide? Some of these aspects, for example, I think one of the greatest things that people can do for their health is having a home health spa, home makeover, to understand that's where they're spending a lot of their time. There's a lot of things that could be compromising their health. There's great technology out there that can help things if people are suffering. People don't realize how much their home could be negatively impacting their health. And by transforming that and getting their health back to a certain state, what I have found almost across the board is once you get your health to what I would say an above standard health, because I don't think standard levels of health or normal levels of health are not very normal. It seems to be a general yearning and awakening and an understanding that we're far more than our physical bodies. So
that's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is amazing. I believe in what my mentor says. Maslow's hierarchy of needs isn't just a pyramid, but it's a bar graph, if you will, of different needs we have of health, of belonging, of having our housing handled, and then to self-actualize their life. And sometimes, it's not a linear journey, but I'm a big proponent of that. And I want to support that to happen, use my life force energies as much leverage ways as possible, and having strategic collaborative partnerships such as with you, that we can leverage our brains to maximize the value and help offering transformative healthcare. Some of these solutions we're inventing as we go. We want to stay creative. Most recently, I was invited by the Navajo Nation to be their medical ambassador and to discuss ways of bringing new care with technology, with Medicaid contracts, and to underserved areas for their mental health crisis and the brain crisis, which isn't just them. I mean, they're a small extreme example of a macro problem of mental health and brain health crises. So my focus really is around save the brains, really save the brains, and also brain fitness. So this conversation can keep going. People can find me I created a new incubating website, a very simple conceptual page where you're invited to contact me and go see how we can work together and explore these journeys. For sure, there is a future journey coming to the Amazon, and people just want to, and I feel a strong mission to make that channel still possible. And the best website for that would be Evolve Health Now, EVOLVE healthnow.com. Also my Insta to see what I'm up to, see my wanderings. I just came back from Burning Man. And Woke Brain Doc, that's the Instagram. But we're really excited to be, in this time and place way that we can offer such change and possibly for transformation. And most of all, make it an epic healing journey that we're on. Let this be fun. I mean, I realize there's a struggle involved, and that struggle is a noble struggle, but let's also have fun in the process. So, let's bring in some play. I'm heading after this to a very high-end, world-class resort spa that's asking me as their medical director to bring in new technologies for their clientele. And we're going to be saving the brains, bringing in a brain fitness program.
I love it. You never cease to surprise me, and you always inspire me, not only to become a better person, but a better healer, but also to remain playful along the way, because every time we get together,
Yes.
it's almost kind of like a Dr. Seuss, in the live person, as we play with words and we play with spirit and we play with song and we dance and we laugh and we share great ideas. And I can't wait to get down to Encinitas again to see you soon. For those of you who wanted to find out more about what Dr. Stefan is all about and some of the things that he's involved in, we put all the show notes will be appearing here on the Awesome Health Podcast. And then we're going to be bringing him back in a future episode, because we've kind of given this is just the genesis of where he is. And I can tell you, the more you learn about Stefan, the more you're going to be inspired about your own possibilities in your life. I really want to thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing some of these things, and as well as the work that you're doing. I'm excited. I think it's great. I know I'm very passionate about the projects that you're involved in, and I know that Bioptimizers is a big supporter of those ideas. So get involved, get activated, and yes, take your hero's journey. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Stefan.
Thank you so much, Wade, and blessings to you and all.
All right, everybody, that wraps up another episode of the Awesome Health Podcast. I want to thank you all for joining. Go to the website, check out some of the other stuff on brain waves that we did with Maddie G, as we referred to, and look for Dr. Stefan. You're going to see him as one of the major influencers in the world of transpersonal psychology and the power of the indigenous nations to help us heal overall. So thanks so much for joining us. Take care. Have a great day.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.